So, hi everyone. I hope you're doing so well, and peace and love to all of you. Happy New Year, happy 2023. I am continuing my conversation with my birthday equity walk that I'd mentioned before in an Instagram Live. So, this is the second annual birthday equity walk that I am hosting. I am super excited about this and actually moved this over today to a Zoom conversation. And so you'll see a little bit of a different format, which means I can put this out into a lot more places besides Instagram. So that's why we have this format today. And as I mentioned in the kickoff Instagram Live, that I said I would be at Zoom and Instagram all over the place. But I mentioned that I would be joined by some really incredible people in my life um, that I wanted to share with all of you as I begin to give more space this year to what it means um, to have, for me, to be on my equity journey, and specifically what it means for Food Recovery Network and our equity journey in how we do our work for Food Recovery Network all across the United States to ensure that people have access to food. Because I think sometimes these topics they're so vast. And when we think about the number of people who are experiencing food insecurity and all the different things that connect to insecurities of all kinds, it can feel overwhelming. And so I wanted to just slow things down a little bit and provide that context and that space. And I also wanted to weave into that people that I really care about, people that I derive inspiration from, people that I derive safety from, um, people that I derive creativity from. And today I am joined by somebody that I've known for a long time, since we
Mhm.
were young. We're still young,
Yeah, we're
but
still young.
younger.
We're holding on, holding on.
Way back. That I know from my Pittsburgh days. I am joined today by Larry Miller. Larry is just an incredible person, and you'll hear me make a lot of announcements throughout this conversation about how incredible Larry is. And so I wanted to talk with Larry about a few different things. So we're gonna go through a variety of different touch points. But honestly, over 12 years now, 15 years now, Larry and I have been friends, and I've just been able to have such incredible conversations with Larry. And so I have been looking forward to this day forever. It was probably 2 years ago that I told Larry, I was like, I want to do a podcast with you so badly. It's a pipe dream of mine. But for now, this is definitely a dream come true for me. So, Larry, thanks for joining me for this conversation.
Thanks for having me, Regina. It's always good to see you. I saw you a couple weeks ago too. We're a
Mm-hmm.
little shindig at your house, so no, it was great to celebrate with you, and it's good to be with you this evening.
Thanks so much, Larry. Yes, and many more gatherings to come. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Well, Larry and I live not too far from one another, we found out. So,
Since we're also
uh,
neighbors.
yeah, we're also neighbors, which is great. And also, okay, so one of my new favorite things for 2023 that I learned about thanks to Larry is this term metroverbs, and I've been spreading that word around everywhere. I'm
Thank you.
crediting Larry. Yes.
To the top we go.
Yes, to the top. Here we are. Larry, how are you? What's going on for you today?
I'm good. I'm good. It's you know, being a morning anchor
Mhm.
here at WSA 9 is it's a great opportunity. I'm loving every minute of it. But certainly you start to really feel it at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when you've been up since about 2 o'clock in the morning. So typically I take a nap in the afternoon. So after I take my nap, I'm ready to go. The second wind is here, game on.
Awesome. We are in for a treat then. We've got the
Yes,
second win, Larry.
yes. The second wind is in position, so we're good.
Well, talking about being a news anchor brings me to one of the first things I wanted to talk with you about, which is, I mean, can you talk to us a little bit about your job? Like, what do you do? What's it like? You get up really early. We know that.
Yeah.
Yes. No,
So
what else though?
yeah, I'm up really early. So wake up for me is 1:45, 2 a.m. every day, Monday through Friday. My job consists of kind of being a editorial voice for our morning newscast. I anchor the morning show. I come on at 5 o'clock, so I anchor at 5 and 6 o'clock, and also do the 12 o'clock news in the afternoon as well. My job as an anchor is to really kind of move the show forward, right? And so my job is to provide color, context, and clarity for the major stories of the day to make sure people understand what's going on, how it impacts them specifically, what things they can do to get involved if they so choose. And then also to lead our team as well. So, oftentimes people see me in front of the camera, but there's an army of folks behind the camera and even reporters that are in different locations. We're all working together to put together a show that is informative, impactful, inspiring. And so my job as an anchor is to really kind of hold all of that together. And so it's a great opportunity, it's a lot of responsibility, and I don't take 1 minute for granted.
Oh, that's amazing, Larry. So, you said so many things there, and I want to make sure that everyone, rewinds, send this to all of your friends, make sure that everyone knows who Larry is. So Larry is a news anchor for WUSA 9. So just in case you've not heard of WUSA 9, for those of you who might not be in the DC, Virginia, Maryland area, I highly recommend checking out Larry's morning show. And then also, Larry is all over social media as well. So you can see some of the amazing people that Larry works with. I've gotten to know some of your other news anchors
Yeah.
because of your social media and other members of your team. You're always shouting them out, and that is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, we're certainly a team, right? And when you're working in at Old Dark 30 with a group of 30, 40 folks, you find yourselves, going from team to family. And so for me, I spend more time with my colleagues than I do with my own family members. And so we treat them well, right? And because we respect the work that they do, we need them, and I appreciate them. And so, giving them a shout out on social media is nothing compared to what they do every single day to make sure that we have the best possible product possible for our viewers at home.
And you were just talking about, your role as a news anchor and the responsibility that role has with it. I have to tell everyone, when Larry was at my house, we were having this get together as he mentioned, and people, once they found out what Larry did, because Larry came in, didn't know anybody, there were some really pointed questions about the role of media, especially when we think about misinformation, especially when we think about who to trust, who not to trust. And I really think that your response to that was so wonderful. And I don't know if you remember or not, but just really
Mhm.
the integrity and the consistency. I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit more about that, because I really think that deserves some space around. It's really difficult, especially in these very busy, packed times.
Yeah, no, I appreciated the questions from our friends at the party. They were coming rapid fire,
They
but
were,
I
they
held
were.
on. I think the climate is tense, and understandably so, given the sort of feedback and criticism, some fair, some unfair, that the news media has received. And when I mean by news media, I'm talking kind of collectively about the major news organizations. Um, and I am a huge proponent of truth. We have a responsibility to kind of uphold the standards in our profession, right? To do no harm, to speak truth to power, to make sure that our sources and information is verified, to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to ask the important questions about what our elected officials are doing, and in some cases are not doing, to improve the lives of the people that they serve. And, given what social media has kind of ushered in with a pretty targeted and substantial misinformation campaign that we see, not just on social media, but in other platforms as well, I think ultimately truth will always win, right? And I think we have a responsibility to do the job that we were taught to do in school and learn and enhance our skills that we've been doing as professionals, which is to make sure that we're right all the time. And that is an awesome responsibility. It is tough, but I think the more that we are transparent in our work and allow people to see the things that we do, kind of pull back the veil a bit so they understand where some of this is coming from, to provide the sort of analysis and context that's necessary. So when we say, at WSA9, we have a franchise called Verify, where we take claims that people see online and we verify whether or not those claims are true or false. That franchise is important because in that franchise, we can say, hey, you may have seen this tweet, this post that's generated hundreds of thousands of views online, but let's provide a little context to why this thing may or may not be true. And let's explain why. And we're going to tell you who we talked to and why these people matter. Giving people a lot of context is probably something that we haven't always done before because we've been bound by constraints, whether or not there's enough room in the paper, whether or not there's enough room in the newscast. So now, given what social media and the internet has allowed us to do, which is to take as much time as we need to write as long as we need to write to make sure that we get it right and that we're thorough, I think is really helping us. I don't think that the criticism is ever going to go anywhere. We will always be criticized because of what we do, but our job is to serve the public. And we will continue to do that and not get caught up in the fray and not get caught up in the noise, but continue to put our heads down, focus on the stories that matter, making sure we get it right every single time, and that we're making sure that the things that we produce are comprehensive, thorough, and most importantly, accurate. And I think if we just stay committed to that, we'll be just fine. It seems simple, but I would argue simplicity is really going to scream above all the other kind of noise that we hear out in the zeitgeist about what people believe, what they don't believe, and what's going on. I think ultimately you will find that people are looking for the constant, right? And when they see that you are just, moving along, getting story after story correct, being thorough, being transparent, answering questions, people trust you. And I think in our business, we can't shy away from questions. If people have concerns, if people want to know something, we can tell them as much as we can, right? Oftentimes, I'm protecting sources too. So there's certain information I can't tell you because I need to protect a source that's giving me information that's allowed me to get a report published or on air. But for what I am able to tell you, hopefully that will suffice and kind of bring back the curtain a little bit so you can see how the sauce gets made.
Oh, that is so helpful to hear all of that,
Mhm.
Larry. And I'm just thinking about, again, where people need it and want to explore further, you have that space for them to go and see how you've verified who you've talked to allow for that consistency. Because I do think, we have access to more tools now. It's not just getting the newspaper, the one newspaper at your home. Now it is many, many different channels. I mean, even considering at Food Recovery Network, we put out a lot of content, and that is part of information that people can or cannot look at. There's just a lot of stuff out there, and so I think what you were talking about is really so compelling. And for everyone listening in, I have to say, Larry, how long have you been a news anchor now, or been in broadcasting?
Yeah, so it would be, I think we're on 13 years now.
So Larry is coming at this with over a decade of experience, and for everyone listening in, Larry's won a few Emmys. He's won a few Emmys, and so celebrity in the house, of course. But so maybe we could actually kind of pivot to that.
Yeah,
I think your credentials really speak for themselves. That you have been at WUSA 9, that you have been promoted to um, the news segment hour. That is there's a lot of people listening in on you,
Mhm.
to you and to your team. Um, I wondered though if you could, because of that, you have been recognized. You have won an Emmy. How many is it? One or
I have
multiples?
two. I have two M's.
Ooh, okay, got a pair.
Got a
Um,
pair.
I wanted to come at this next question. When we think about, I mean, just the amazing talent and hard work that you put into this, into winning an Emmy and being recognized. I'm going to ask you how that felt in just a second. But the question I want to get underneath that is, um, you are a very goal-oriented person from what
Mhm.
I've seen of you in the many years that I've known you. So it's probably been longer than 13 years now. I'm really bad with dates and times. What was it, like
Okay.
2006? 2006 maybe? What does that make this? Okay, 12 years, 13 years. Um, I'm like, oh, math in my head. That's what that side was all about. Um,
Whoa.
I love math. I really do. Um, but I've seen you in many different stages in your life. And one of the big stages has been your career. Um, and another goal that you've had is home ownership. And there's these really amazing goals that you have set out for yourself, and you have you know begun to orient the tools around you, your skill sets around you, your education around you to achieve those goals. And I just wanted to ask you a few questions around that.
Yeah.
What, why, why goals? What does that mean for you? Why do you set goals? What is your relationship with goals? Just to maybe bring it broadly, because not everybody sets goals. They
Yeah,
really don't.
no, I think that's a good question. I think I would have to, first give a nod to my mother, Cheryl Koderish, in this one.
Hmm.
Growing up in my household um, was, was it tough? Maybe tough is not the best word. Um, my mother had clear expectations. We may not have known how we were going to achieve those
Mm,
goals, but we
mm,
always knew what the expectation was. And with my mother, I remember being in elementary school talking about college. We didn't know how we were going to pay for it. We always knew I was going.
mm,
And that has always stuck with me because I certainly didn't have a lot of money growing up. There were times that things got tight, things got tough. We persevered, we moved on, things got better. But the expectation was always that I was to perform at the highest level and I was to be successful. There was no other option. And so when you grow up in that sort of household where factors that people would consider to be detriment to your success are not considered at all, and you are expected to rise above, regardless of orientation, race, handicap status, whatever, then you find yourself always in a position of trying to figure it out and getting clear and taking action. And that sits with you. That stays with you from a child to an adult. And so for me, um, I always had a goal of, okay, I want to get to this market or I want to get this opportunity. And realizing that oftentimes, okay, I didn't get the job this time, I was passed over, but I'm going to keep trying. Or I didn't get it this time, I'm going to keep trying. You realize that even in the drawbacks, there's something to learn that's really setting you up for the opportunity when it comes to you. Um, for me, I look at goals as a way for me to do kind of my own self-evaluative process to make sure that I'm having the sort of um, I'm making the sort of progress that I want to make professionally and personally. Right. When I said I wanted to become an anchor at WSA 9 in a specific capacity, then I did the work. And I didn't focus so much on the opportunity as making sure that I was operating at the highest level that I possibly could. And when I had what has no doubt been my best year in my professional career, did it end with a promotion for the opportunity that I wanted since I first walked in the door. So sometimes you don't get it on the first try. Sometimes you don't get it on the second try, and that's okay. And I think there's a lesson in that too. It certainly humbles you. It prepares you. It gets you, I think, a bit more hungry for the opportunity, so that when it really shows up, when you get the thing that you've been working on and working toward, the taste of victory is that much sweeter. So for me, goals are important because it helps me make sure that I'm making the sort of progress that I want to make, that I'm having the sort of impact that I want to have in my community and amongst my colleagues, and that I'm fundamentally staying true to who I am as an individual and why I decided to do the work that I'm doing
Whew. I'm just gonna absorb that.
now. You like take it in,
I'm taking
take it
it
in,
in. I
take it in.
really am. Because here's the thing, I do know a lot about your journey, and I know how much your mom means to you.
Mhm.
And one thing that you said, that I just wanted to tie into the kickoff conversation I had around my birthday equity walk, which was, um, what are the tools that we have around us to help us? And I was talking about myself specifically, to show up, positive, to show up in a helping manner, to show up in a way that is aiding to a situation and not detracting from a situation. And that, I didn't always have those things, but a friendship like yours, Larry, I think is one of the ways that I can literally, you know, be who I am, and show up, knowing that I have friends like you in my corner and in my, you have my back.
Yep.
And I was just thinking about, this idea that your mom instilled in you, um, her expectations of you, clear expectations.
Mhm.
And, so many times the little ones, don't have that. And I would say my household was the complete opposite of that. There
Mhm.
were not clear expectations on what achievement looked like, why it looked that way, what was expected of me. I didn't have that at all. And so to have such an opposite, hearing that for you, that your mom had clear expectations and that you were going to be successful, and you were so beautiful to talk about what that looks like, where, a lot of people would get burnt out, or like, my mom's never happy, I cannot satisfy my mom. But it wasn't like that for you. It was a building of your character, and of what, patience, and, all of these different things that you had to grow, within your relationship with your mom, and how that became your internal. I just think that was so amazing to hear.
No, I appreciate that. I credit her with a lot because what my mother gave me that has been the most valuable in my life is this character of resiliency,
Hmm.
and being able to weather the storm, lick my wounds, and keep moving.
Yep.
And I think that's more important than anything.
Hmm.
People would have assumptions about my journey, given my background, given what they see about me. And I have been thankful that those things haven't affected me at all. The people can, say whatever they want to say about me, but I've been very clear that I'm going to be successful either with you or without you, but I'm going to
Hmm.
win.
Hmm.
And I've always found that having that sort of mindset has been much more beneficial than assuming or believing that, well, because I'm black I didn't get this, because I'm gay I didn't get that. Like I spend very little time thinking about those things, and more I spend more of my time thinking about what sort of impact am I going to have today, and how am I going to win for myself and my team. And I've found that having that sort of mindset has been much more helpful, because what it does for me is kind of takes away this victimhood narrative and empowers me more to go out and be successful and to really give back to the people that depend on us every single day. So, I stay there and, I kind of block out all the other stuff and I stay committed to that. And that's a lesson that started, let my mother tell it day one when they brought her to me from the little room there where they took all the newborns.
Yeah.
Uh, my mother had a cesarean, so she was asleep. And when she woke up, she says, "Bring him to me." So she recounts to me often that first conversation that she had with me when the nurses brought me in to her, and she was looking me over, making sure I had everything. He was good. And she recounts often to me that first conversation that she had with me about expectations, that even then she tells me that
Mm.
she said, listen, you're going to college one day, you will be successful, you will be a father, you will be a husband, you will be these things. And that's a conversation that started young. And so again, we may not have had the path to get there. It may not have been clear at the time, but speaking those things out and being very clear about what the expectation is only empowers you to figure out the way forward.
Again, just thinking about everyone's different journeys, and this is truly, I think, one of the ways, Larry, that you and I are very much on alignment of there's no other way. I mean, there's lots of different ways up. I always say there's lots of different ways up a mountain, but we're getting to that mountain. Like there's
Yeah.
just no other. I wouldn't think otherwise. And I feel the same about you. Every day, it's like, how are we going to feed more people?
Mm-hmm.
And that one day, what's going to happen is hunger in the United States will be eradicated. Like that's the goal. And when that is eradicated, then so much of the economic insecurity is eradicated, and I don't waver from that. And just hearing you talk about that and how you are able to show up and how you are able to succeed. I have to tell you this. I didn't think about this until you mentioned the story about or the idea that yeah, you might not get that job that you wanted the first time around. You might not even get it the second time around. And by the third time, you probably don't even want that job anymore because something else has opened up for you. So Larry and I know each other from Pittsburgh, as I mentioned, because of this leadership development organization called CORO, Center for Civic Leadership. That's how we first met. And I have to tell you, I didn't think about this until now, but I knew at that point, I was going to be in the nonprofit sector. I had just finished up grad school. I had worked in the nonprofit sector at the ACLU in Maine. I did AmeriCorps, and I just knew that the nonprofit sector was where I was going to be. And I applied for this job at Coro, and I didn't get
Oh,
it.
wow.
I totally didn't get it. And then they called me back, and essentially the person that they offered it to, who is a dear friend of mine, I love him very much. Um, he didn't accept the job.
Oh,
And
wow.
so then they're like, "Hey, so this job is still open. Would you want to consider it still?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, I totally want that job." And I stayed at Coro for almost 6 years. I mean, I loved the job so much, but I kind of had forgotten about the fact that like I, I didn't get I was waiting tables, living a good life, but just waiting for the bigger the bigger door to open, which was to get back into the nonprofit sector. I'd never wavered from that.
Never. And another story that I like to share with people was, I used to live here maybe about 2003, 2004, right before I moved to Pittsburgh. And I had gotten a job interview for an agency, but it required me to do an interview almost an hour and a half away in Maryland. Um, and I didn't have a car. There was no metro, there was no bus. And because I was under the age of 25, I couldn't rent a car. And so I'm thinking to myself and talking to people and asking them, I'm like, how am I going to get there? And it dawned on me. I said, Larry, I'm going to rent a U-Haul. I rented
Oh my God.
a U-Haul truck and I drove the U-Haul to the interview an hour and a half away. I parked the U-Haul in the back because I didn't want people to see me walk up to an office building with this big ass U-Haul truck parked in the parking lot. And I got out of the U-Haul, got myself together, went into the interview, got the job, came out, drove the hour and a half back home in this overgrown U-Haul, stopped and got a snack, dropped the U-Haul off, and got back on the metro and went home. And I just thought about the fact that, listen, I was hell bent on getting to that interview. Nothing was going to stop me. And if I had to rent a U-Haul in order to get there, then that's what I was going to do.
That's beautiful. I've not heard that story before. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That is I mean the epitome of inspiring. That's just so great. I have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah, there.
Okay, so it goes along with this idea of being goal oriented and working towards the goals that you set out for yourself. You have achieved many of the goals you've set out for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondered, what does that do for you once you've achieved a goal? Once you're on that mountaintop, at one point you were in the valley, and you walked on up that mountain and you achieved a significant goal. You are, at such a high point in your career, being the news anchor that you are, home ownership achievement. These are really big goals. And when you achieve a really big goal such as that, what happens for you? Walk us through what that's like for you.
So I look at it from two different perspectives. So one in a personal perspective, one in a professional perspective, and I'll start professionally. So professionally, when you reach a goal, something that you've been working toward for some time, I've struggled with that because I haven't always taken the victory lap. And I do think that you have to give yourself the breath and the space to take the victory lap, especially if you've been working on something for a long time. That's important. I'm typically wired just to keep going. And I'm like, okay, I got there. What's next? Because I'm not done yet. You have to celebrate the wins, acknowledge the losses, but really celebrate the wins when you get them. And nothing meant more to me after they made the official announcement that I was moving to the morning show and that I've been promoted than to get notes from my colleagues telling me, Larry, you've earned this. You've worked hard. You have been in the fight and you have earned this. Because not only did I, get the job that I was going for, but my colleagues respect my work and know that I'm the best person for the job. That mattered to me. So I think kind of taking the victory lap is great, but I think for me also figuring out what's next, right? Because it's like, okay, I'm here, now what? You've been working for this, you've been crying about it, you've been getting on people's nerves about it, you got it, what are you going to do? How are you going to make it your own? What's going to make you different from the people that were here before you?
Mm.
And that's where the real work comes in. So all of the preparation, all of the late nights, the countless hours, the script rewrites, the editorial debates, the self-critical work that I was on, all of that got me to this point, and now I'm here, and now I have got to deliver. Not just for the station and the network, but also for myself personally. If you get it, you have a responsibility to take care of it and to leave it better than how you found it. And so for me, that looks like showing up, being engaged, being intentional, being a resource, being a leader, being a follower when necessary, and making sure that I'm always a team player and I'm there for the collective and supporting everybody, no matter what the professional journey looks like. So you find that once you get to the top, that the work looks different. The expectation is different. The sort of conversations that you have at that level are different. And so it takes some time to kind of get used to that. But once you do, then you have a responsibility to deliver. You know, you said you were the guy, you said you were the star, you said you were the person, show us. And so that means every single day, every script, every show, every interaction, every moment has got to be meaningful. It's got to be something. I've got to leave my mark, and I got to let people know that I was here
Mm,
and I gave my all.
mm. I love that. Everyone listening in now and, in the future, we all deserve this inspirational moment brought to us by Larry Miller. Thank you for that. That was so helpful to hear that. I have to say when I'd set out a goal to becoming an executive director, I didn't know the mission area. I didn't know a lot of things, but I knew, yes, that I felt comfortable taking on responsibility. I felt comfortable building within a team a vision for how to improve XYZ to make people's lives better. I knew all of those things. And then when I became the executive director of Food Recovery Network, and you get in there, and then it's like, oh, yes, a whole new set of goals immediately opens up.
Yeah.
But I think what you mentioned, Larry, that's so important was to take that victory lap. Take that victory lap. Um, However amount of time you can give yourself, that is really important to demarcate the journey that got you there, and then the progress to the next goal that you might have.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's important. You know, my journey and my path to this position was certainly not linear and completely different from that of my colleagues. You know, some of them were kind of maybe in comparison to mine, the path to the top was straight. You know,
Mm,
they may not have dealt with some of the things that I encountered. That's fine. But man, when you get there, you gotta just take a minute and just recognize everything that you've done, all the sacrifices you've made, um, the the quiet moments that were the loudest.
mm,
You really do just have to just allow yourself to sit in it for a second and say, I did it. I'm thankful, and I'm going to do the best job that I possibly can.
mm. Well, I said I was going to circle back
Yeah.
to these pair of Emmys that you have.
Okay.
Speaking of taking the victory lap, what was that like? When did it happen? Like, give us all the details. I'm gonna keep sipping my tea. Not that it's not gossip, it's not that kind of tea, but I just feel like I need to be like this. Tell me everything about, these two huge achievements.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, the first Emmy I received was for a story I did, I want to say back in 2018. This was for a story about Wendy Martinez, and a lot of people may remember this story. This was a young lady who, while out on a jog in Logan Circle, was stabbed by a man and subsequently died after that encounter. Her fiance at the time, after her death, ran the Boston Marathon in her honor, and he finished the race. My story with Daniel had him kind of looked at his training, his experience in the race, but what people didn't really talk with him about, which is what we did, and I think for us was the reason why we won, was that we actually went back with him and asked him to recount for us the moment that he learned about his fiance's transition. And we got information about that story that we did not know. No one knew.
Mm,
And it was going back and spending time with him and kind of asking questions or re-asking questions that we start to realize that there was something critical in his story that we didn't know before that we needed to know. And we're sitting in his home in Northwest DC, And there's a picture of him and Wendy together. That's their engagement photo. And it's massive. It's a massive photo right in the living room. And we're doing the interview with this, I'm on one side, he's on the other, and this photo, this large photo on the walls wedged between us. And he's talking about Wendy's life, and he's telling me about the moment he realized something was wrong when she was out on her run, and how when he came downstairs and turned the corner and he saw the flashing lights, he knew that something was terribly wrong. And for us, it was the sort of story that we wanted to be sensitive with. We wanted to allow Daniel to tell his story without interruption, without always kind of narration by myself, but just as raw and as reflective and as quiet as necessary. And I think seeing a man who wholeheartedly and genuinely loved a woman and expected to marry her only for her to lose her life on a run, but for him to continue to run in her honor to make sure that her memory wasn't lost, I think for us was the reason why we won, because we took our time, we focused Daniel and centered Daniel in his own story, and we made sure that the woman that he loved wasn't forgotten by anyone. So that was the story that we won my first Emmy for, and probably the story that I think was the most impactful on me. And it was we spent the entire day with Daniel. We were on the race route with him. I was there checking on him at every point. We were following him the entire time. I would see him during the race. We would give him a high five, would tell him, give him an encouraging word. We would get video with him. We were there at the beginning. We were there at the end. I literally worked 24 hours straight that day. It was an amazing sight to see. And during the race, I even had a moment where I got really emotional. And I don't tend to do that, you know me, I don't really like.
You leave that to me.
I'm like, Regina, tighten up.
I know, it's true.
Get it together. There was a moment that I broke down and I started crying. We had been there, maybe it was, emotion, part of it was emotion, part of it was exhaustion. And it was a moment during the race where I think we were at mile 12, 13 at this point. And Daniel's coming up. Wendy's mother is there along the race route, along with her other family members. And Daniel comes up and he gives Wendy's mother a hug. And, they cheer him on and they tell him they got him and he's going to do it. And as Daniel leaves, Wendy's mother turns to me and she starts sobbing. And she says, he's going to finish it. He's going to do it for Wendy. And I lost it at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've covered a lot of stories.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And in our business, I try to be as, I try to make sure I don't get caught up in the emotion. I want people to understand what these folks are going through, but for myself, I don't want it to cloud my ability to tell the story accurately. It's by far the first time in my career where I kind of broke down. Because it was, you could see Wendy's mother there. And I was just like, man, it just got me. So yeah, that story means a lot to me. It means a lot to me. I've done a lot of stories that I'm proud of, but that one is my top two of
Yeah.
stories that I hold close to me.
And it sounds like you hold that one close to you and you won an Emmy for it. Like the two
Yeah,
work independently of one another. And, it's funny because um, I obviously I could never do your job for a lot of reasons. You've worked and put in so many years, but I'm like a crying mess all the time,
it's okay.
you
It's
know?
okay.
And I will tell you this. I have heard this story before and I cried the first time you told it. I'm just like I almost ugly cried just right now. Um, but it is so important for your job to be able to say tell the story and unfiltered and not be like me where I'm like, yeah, go on, no, go on. And then suddenly, but I cry every day at my job and I'm, if I ever do get a podcast, I'd be like, I'm gonna cry. That's what I'll title it. I'm gonna cry. Just know right now, I'm gonna cry.
Regina,
Thank you
no, don't,
for relaying that. Yeah,
don't.
yeah. Um, so I had heard that story before, but I did not realize that that is one of the stories that you had won an Emmy for. So, um, okay, well we'll save the second Emmy story for a next conversation because I told you that I wanted to keep this conversation brief and I want to sort of stick to that. Uh,
I'm
Larry,
here. You
yeah,
might as well
you're
go
out
for
here. We got you. We got you.
it.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Larry is very aware of my relationship to time. So it's a battle. It is a battle.
We're on a
Um,
journey every day. We're on a journey.
every day. It's true. Every day is a journey. It is and speaking of that, I have to say I recently a couple days ago, in fact, just learned of the passing of a friend of mine from Pittsburgh who is around my age.
Mm,
And so honestly, every day is special. It's
yeah.
very you know, and I have to pull in the bell hooks on this, um we might we do we do have hardships. We really do. And you've talked about some of the hardships that you've experienced along your journey. I know that I've shared some of mine. Part of the equity walk with Food Recovery Network is to support the economic security of everyone. um, and sometimes we have to work jobs that have suppressed wages, and sometimes we have to work jobs where the people aren't nice to us and they aren't great to work with. And bell hooks just reminds us that if we can, to just show up with love,
Mhm.
and do our jobs when we can, like no other person can, and pull in a little bit of your mom into this,
Yeah.
and we cannot always do that, and sometimes we don't want to, and we need to take stands on some stuff. But I just wanted to pull that out, um and then leading into maybe a more um overt conversation around equity. Larry, you did this incredible piece, and I wonder if we're going to get some awards on this. And when I say we, I mean you. You did all the hard work. But
We've gotten one award already on it, so.
um, you did this incredible piece, and when we post this conversation, I'll make sure to link to WUSA 9 and to your social so people can get um, more Larry in their lives. But this journey in particular, this investigative piece in particular that you worked on, um, really does bring into the conversation this equity walk, and that was around you talked to a couple whose house they were going to sell their house, and it was appraised um, at a very they weren't thinking it would be so low,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
through yeah. So could you talk to us about? I'll let you. I mean, it's your story, but I think it just really needs to be. I want everyone that I know to know this story too.
so I saw um, a woman by the name of Jacqueline Priestley give an interview to a network where she was getting at this issue of home appraisal bias, essentially that because you're a Black homeowner who lives in a majority Black neighborhood, that the value of your home will be undervalued substantially simply because of the demographics of that neighborhood.
Mhm.
And I saw the interview with her and I called her the next day. I reached out to her and we went up talking on the phone. And I said, hey, they did a really bad job with your interview that I watched. I think you're actually trying to get at something larger. Let me
Awesome.
help you. Let me help you.
Wow.
And that's how it started. And
Wow.
it started with a phone conversation. And then I walked into who's now our news director, Carrie Hernandez. She was a manager in our news department at the time of a different capacity. And I said, hey, I'm really interested in this story. I think this actually might be something. I think I want to work on this. And she was like, okay, go for it. And next thing I knew, it wasn't just Jackie's family that got a home constructed for $1.8 million, and the house only appraises at I think 1.5. I'm sorry, 1.3. So it's $500,000 less than what it cost to build. But her neighbor, who also owned a home in that same neighborhood, their home appraised $300,000 less than what they bought it for 3 years prior. And you were realizing that it wasn't just this neighbor, that it was another homeowner in this part of Prince George's County. It was another homeowner in this section of Prince George's County. And once I started talking with other real estate professionals, I got a sense that the issue was a lot more pronounced and widespread than what we even knew. So I started working on that story in the summer of 2020. Trying to make sure I got my dates right. Started working on that story in the summer of 2020. And I'm sorry, the summer of 2021. And it aired in November of 2021. And it exploded from there.
Yes.
From the day that we dropped it, boom,
Yep.
it just ignited. I was getting calls nonstop. Because at the time, we were also in the middle of a gubernatorial race where we had the Democratic candidates, vying for the nomination. The candidates were getting involved as well. Peter Franchot, the state comptroller for Maryland, sent a letter to the Attorney General requesting an investigation based on our reporting. We saw other groups start to take action as a result of our reporting. We now have a law passed in Maryland that looks at this issue. They'll start that once the legislative session gets underway in January. And that's a result of our reporting. We were invited to the White House. We heard the Biden administration announce new policy changes aimed at making the process more equitable. And that was a direct response to our reporting and the reporting of my colleagues at other stations around the country who've done similar work that has been just as, if not more impactful than what I did. And you realize, I think you really get to see what the power of journalism is in instances like that. What started out as me just showing people, hey, this is a family who built a home in a neighborhood for their children, for their extended relatives to one day live with them, who even when they are told that this is the American dream, can't get it simply because of the neighborhood in which they choose to build their home. And when we tell people that, in this society that, if you work hard, you can do great things. When we have barriers like this, when there are clear injustices like this, you have to really ask yourself, what are we doing?
Yep.
And, for these families, they weren't asking, no one's asking for a handout, no one's asking for, any sort of resources. They just want the same sort of consideration and evaluation that you would give any other homeowner in any other part of town if it were not majority Black.
Mm.
And to see our work, start as a conversation in the summer to then be published in the November and then have all this impact as a result of it really shows you if you're committed to the facts,
Mm.
you're committed to transparency and the truth, that you can really support and help communities in making sure that, a simple home appraisal is fair, equitable, and just, and that they get to retain the sort of value in the home like we would expect any other home would in that particular market.
Mm. Let me grab my charger for my computer. I have
Okay.
some thoughts. Me,
No problem, love.
I thought I had enough. At this point, we can edit this part out.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so I have so many thoughts on, I mean, this incredible story that you were able to do the research, have the conversations. As you mentioned, other news stations across the U.S. have also, tapped into this. It is, uh, when we talk about equity, I mean, what some of the words that come to my mind is, this idea that you just said is consideration, that this family wanted just equal consideration than anybody else. So some of the things that were coming to my mind are just affirmation, that the structure that we've built in the United States is not one of equality and is not one of equal access. I know that with the National Association of Realtors, they've come under a lot of scrutiny because of some of the individual decisions that realtors are making. I know that's different than appraisers, but I think it's really important that folks know that the National Association of Realtors, they've actually done some research, for and with Food Recovery Network around, food insecurity and housing insecurity. To say that if you are food insecure, chances are very high that you're also housing insecure. And I wanted to bring that up in the sense too that they have a lot of resources around this concept of redlining, which since there was the ability to buy homes, after Reconstruction through the end of slavery in the United States, when people had money to buy homes, it was an unequal playing field for Black people in the United States. I've mentioned a few times the book The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. I'm such a huge fan of Isabel Wilkerson's, but she talks about Mahalia Jackson, who at this point in her career is world famous. And Mahalia Jackson has to have a white colleague of hers, a white friend of hers, buy a house in Chicago because they would not sell a house to a Black woman in this white neighborhood. So a white proxy, white person, white friend, as proxy, buys this house. It's Mahalia Jackson's house, and it gets firebombed. Um, World famous gem to all of us, and her home is firebombed because of the fear of what it might mean when the structure is the racial hierarchy, when it gets scratched a little bit, what's underneath that surface? We don't want to find out. We don't want, we don't want to pressure test the myth of racial hierarchy that we've created because what it means for some of us in our psyche. And by us, I mean the dominant caste. So that came up in my mind as well. Um, and so, I also think about the home that I own in Washington, D.C., that is predominantly African American neighborhood. And what that means in terms of like the neighborhood right across, Rhode Island Avenue, and
Mhm.
how those homes are vastly more expensive, than the homes where I am. So all these things definitely come into play. And so where is that story going now, Larry? What are some things that are happening because of that story?
So, now we have, I believe, HB 1097 in the Maryland legislature that passed. That bill will form and forms a task force that will um, look at this issue statewide, provide recommendations to remedy. The problem that we have in Maryland specifically, and understand that each jurisdiction is different in its own right. And so I'm talking about Maryland because that's where the story for us
Right,
focused. Um, the issue with Maryland was that there is little data, both from the appraisal commission itself in terms of kind of demographic information about the appraisal workforce in the state of Maryland,
right,
and there's limited information about the number of complaints that the commission itself receives about this specific issue. There's also an education problem. People don't know that there, at least in Maryland and in other jurisdictions as well, there's a clear process by which if you get a appraisal that just doesn't make sense, you
hmm,
can challenge that appraisal. Now, given the fact that if you think about the market in 2020, 2021, it was cooking, right?
yes,
Houses were going off the market in, an hour's time, and people were going, above and beyond to get into homes. Refinancing was just as aggressive with rates at historic lows. People were really trying to take advantage of those opportunities when they presented themselves. So considering all of that, um, it was important to note that there is a process by which if you get a low home appraisal, that you can have that appraisal challenged. And you can file complaints with the states that will, should your case be successful, help remedy some of the issues associated with that appraisal. Now, in the cases that we mentioned, and I think it's important that we're clear about this, is that we dealt with homeowners that were getting homes refinanced. And it seems as if that was where we were having the biggest issue exists, because in a home refinance, typically the homeowner has to be there. When you're thinking about going through the initial process of purchasing a home, you are not having to kind of interact with the appraiser in the same way that you would for a home refinance. And so it was in the home refinancing realm that we saw a lot of these problems take place. So what we have is a bill that's going to investigate it, a state legislature that seems interested in addressing this. But, even in our conversations with the politicians, we were clear that, we're not done. And we're going to stay on this for as long as we need to. And this is not something we did because it was in vogue or it was
right,
interesting. We did it because there was a clear problem, and we did it because we wanted to make sure other people knew about it. And successfully, we've been able to do that. But until it's fair for all Marylanders, Black, white, Native, whomever, then we've got a lot of work to do. And that's a charge then that then gets turned on elected officials.
right.
You have the position to affect change. What are you doing? Why haven't you done it? And then what does this mean for voters when they need to go back to the ballot box in 4 years and 2 years?
Mm. I love that. And when we think about, um, philosopher Biggie Small says, and if you don't know, now you know. And we all know, so this is something that we can hold you accountable when we go to vote in 2 years and 4 years, as you just said. And for everyone listening in, I I want to pull in another conversation that I had. Well, I was just there as someone to help um, put the space together for FRN alum Angela Lynn moderated a wonderful conversation. With another FRN alum Dominique, and Poor People's Campaign Tony, um, and Angela was mentioning, yes, when we go to the voting box, that is really important. But the day after, and the day after, and the day after are also really important days and times and moments for us to understand the issues that matter to us. Where are our values? And how are we seeing those reflected in the platforms of people that say that they share our values? And if they do, then making sure that people's homes are assessed equally, no matter what you look like, no matter what your abilities are, that's being assessed equally is something that we need to make sure that people are knowledgeable about and going to enforce that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's important. People, rely on news organizations like myself to make sure they understand what's going on, and we have a responsibility to ask those elected officials, what are you doing about the thing that you said was a problem? And when you got on the bandwagon and you said you were committed to this, and you're here now, what are you going to do about it? And when are you going to get it done?
Absolutely. And so again, for everyone listening in, WUSA 9, Larry Miller, we can get in touch with Larry. If you have questions, if you see things happening in your community, WUSA 9 is a resource for all of us. And we've heard throughout the conversation from Larry how much time and effort goes into all of the stories that they put forward for all of us. But also, I was really just so excited to hear about the independence that, you're saying that your news channel provides to you. I'm really interested in this situation, or here's something that I think is going to be important. And they say, you do your thing. That is amazing to hear.
Yeah, no, I mean it's really helpful, right? Uh, that they trust you
Yeah.
to bring back the goods, as we like to say, right? I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the fact that like this work doesn't happen with one individual. It literally is a team. I may be the person that um, is spearheading it, but it's the photographer that's on the shoots with me. It's the editor that's making sure that the story resonates. It's the executive producer that's going back, checking all of our sources. It's the lawyer that's asking legal questions when we are going in for our final review. It's our news director that's providing the space and resources and time to get all of that done. So, yeah, I have the great opportunity of kind of making those connections, kind of negotiating with people, trying to get people to talk, going back, having conversation after conversation to get certain information included in the story. But it really is the team that supports me, and that work would not have been as impactful as it was had it not been for the people that were there with me along the way that helped me get this story over the finish line. So I'm grateful to them too, because their work is what helps us win ultimately.
It's so true. And those wins are for all of us. Okay, so I have one last question for you.
Shoot.
It's a woo woo. It's a very broad one, so feel free to pull out the direction that you want to go in. But
Oh, super
since it is,
existential.
it could be, it could be. It is thinking about the future.
Mhm.
Now that here we are, it's 2023. I was just wondering if you could, personally, professionally, wherever you want to lead us, what are you working on, looking forward to? What's of interest to you? What are you exploring? Any of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Personally, I look forward to a family in the next couple of years. I look forward to being a better friend, a better son, a better neighbor. So I look forward to just kind of being better, doing better, right?
Mm,
Professionally, I look forward to staying present in the now, and enjoying the opportunity that I have. I am there. And when my time is up, you will know that I was there. And I'm committed to that and all the work that's associated with that. I will tell you that we are in the middle of another major housing investigation, that um, we are in receipt of the majority of our paperwork, and we expect to publish within the next 3 weeks or so. And this is another case that will expose or kind of give, let me put it this way. This is another case that I think will highlight some of the issues that some homeowners say that they have when it comes to getting an equitable appraisal. This story takes us to another state. This story has a pretty significant paper trail with it. We're going to document all of it, and that's currently what we're in the midst of. We're slowly starting to wrap that up.
amazing. Wow. Everyone, Larry Miller, dear friend of mine and complete source of inspiration to me. Thanks so much, Larry, for talking with me today. I do hope that we can have, maybe a couple more conversations. I know you are
Yeah.
very busy. I like these second wind conversations with Larry.
Second
Um,
win. Yeah, second win.
right, everyone get ready, get ready. And just a reminder for everyone, this conversation is part of my birthday equity walk. My goal this year, so between my birthday and January 13th, is to inspire, encourage, ask those of you who are in a financial situation to do so, to become a monthly recurring donor to Food Recovery Network, the organization that I care so much about. My goal is to combined, with $10 a month recurring donations, $15 a month, $7.99, $500 a month, whatever we can do. No amount honestly is too small, that together with our combined efforts, we can raise $600 a month for Food Recovery Network. Individual donation is so important to us to help us as a nonprofit, weather the storms of financial downturns. We're always looking for funding through foundations, and that is very slow work. And it's not always consistent work, but through recurring monthly donations, that can really help us to stay the course. So if it's in your ability to do so, please do consider becoming a monthly recurring donor for Food Recovery Network. I would appreciate it. It is my birthday, I'm asking.
Yes.
If you don't ask, right? If you don't ask. But Larry, thank you so much for your time. I'm gonna see you really soon.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Neighbor.
Right? I have so much to think through on all the amazing things that you just said, and I'm also going to just um, I'm thinking of Daniel and Wendy.
Mhm.
And so I just appreciate you breathing that into the conversation today, um, and to really continue to put the names and the faces to the hard work that you do every day. Wendy, and your family, and Daniel, um, much love. And Larry, thanks again for your time. This was really special.
No, thank you, Frank. Anything for you. You know that.
Okay, I'll talk to you really soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.